is Daniel Lee. This is my project exploring my musical heritage. Alright, background. So the family members I interviewed for this project were my mother and sister. And for context, both my parents do come from Korea, so the answers given by them are affected by their nationality in some way. Questions towards my mother. Favorite artists slash songs slash styles.
I'd say my favorite artist would actually be a composer. I love Mozart and his pieces. A favorite of mine being the magic flute. I'd say the style of music is classical.
Occasions that you hear this music.
You're probably familiar with when I hear this kind of music. In the mornings on our old radio player. I'll play CDs of classical music while making breakfast and lunch for your siblings.
Do you sing or play an instrument?
Back when I was pregnant with your sister, I had taken up the violin wanting to get really good at it. After your sister was born, I stopped playing.
Do you dance? And what kind of music would you normally dance to?
I normally don't dance. I'd say if there was any occasion, it'd be at church with the gospel music they play.
My sister now. What are your favorite artists slash songs slash styles?
My favorite artists group right now would be BTS. Their best song is Spring Day. I'd say the style is K-pop, as in pop music, I guess.
Specific occasions that you listen to this kind of music?
Usually, I'm listening to K-pop with my earbuds in at school. Otherwise, I'm playing it on my speakers at home.
Do you sing or play an instrument of any sort?
I'm in my school's choir group. You could put down that I sing.
To what kind of music do you usually dance to?
With what I said about K-pop, with their dance choreographies, I sometimes try and copy the moves with my friends.
Alright, so on to research in the classical genre. So for the history, to briefly summarize such a long and distinguished type of genre, Western classical music comes largely from Europe, Western Europe. And to take into account the classical period of classical music, which in classical music there are many different periods of time within eras, the era of Mozart was the classical period. And during that time, you could see the process in music making was very different from even the Romantic period to today. For one, composers were worked under royalty and nobles, and they were tasked with providing music for religious events, royal events, and such and such. And uh, during that time, the form of the music was very similar between composers, and they had limited creative freedoms during that time. And Mozart was one who heavily rebelled and disliked that kind of limit on his own creative freedom, and he clashed with his the noble he worked under oftentimes because of this. And in this kind of era, composers were actually considered the same, given the same respect and under the same position as servants during this time. Alright, so getting back to genre periods and what I said about the many periods of genre within classical music, one very important event or movement that happened almost directly after Mozart's time was the Enlightenment movement. And during this time, there was almost a renaissance. Musicians and composers were given much more respect, and the other eras of classical music pretty much came because of this. As for notable artists within these periods, Um, you can classical is Mozart. The Romantic period could be attributed to Beethoven, Wagner, uh, lots of famous composers during this time. And to 20th century, um, 20th and 21st century modernism, postmodernism, impressionism. Claude Debussy is one who pops up. There's someone who's very notable today is probably someone like Steve Reich or Philip Glass, those kind of composers. Music, the instrumentation and well, instruments found within it are pretty much known to almost everybody by now. It's very recognizable. It's the orchestra lineup. You got the strings, the woodwinds, the brass, the percussion as the four main sections, and within those sections you can find violins, flutes, trumpets, mallets, but configurations of those sections do exist, like string quartets with a first and second violin, a viola, and a cello. Alright, so that was a snippet of the Magic Flute Overture. First impressions. So, from what I got, the music starts off very introspective and soft with the violins, and then gradually gains momentum and its dynamic range. And I found that strings figured prominently in the piece overall. For the oral analysis, I found that the music was mainly in 4/4, and it was a particularly slower paced tempo. And in its form, it definitely seemed like there were three sections overall, with phrases or ideas or motifs introduced and developed over time as the music went on. And for instruments, I found that the horn section was used to dynamically shift the mood of the piece from introspective to exciting and energetic when they came in. So the history of K-pop and research. So while K-pop, Korean pop has pop in its name, the term has kind of become an umbrella to define a style of Korean music that draws influence from lots of different genres like R&B, EDM, rock, hip hop, etc. Initially, its rise and even the origins come from a group called So Taji and Boys, a group that mixed hip hop into the style initially. And as the years passed from that group, K-pop has become known for its girl groups and boy groups under the big three companies producing such style of music, and they are SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP Entertainment. And the groups under these companies became very popular internationally in the Hallyu waves in the mid 2000s, and that translates to Korean wave, meaning the quick growth of Korean entertainment and culture internationally. Genres and styles. So, inspired by Western music, K-pop is post-genre in that it switches many different genres, even mid-song, and still it's one cohesive song. And This could be attributed to the wider effects of the streaming era on music, where one can now consume music in many different styles and genres with ease at the tip of your fingertips. Um, and typically, your most basic ingredients to a modern K-pop song is a dance choreography, verses sung by different members, and sometimes a rap verse or two. In groups of K-pop, members are often given roles such as lead vocalist, lead rapper, or main dancer. Instruments. So this one is with modern pop music, it can largely vary from song to song. Popular artists slash groups include Twice, Big Bang, BTS, and Blackpink. Alright, so that was a snippet of Spring Day by BTS. So, first impressions. From what I got, it seemed to be melancholic vocals with electronic slash rock ballad instrumentation. And for the music video of the song, I could see imagery of winter and imagery of loneliness juxtaposed with symbolism of spring with renewal and rebirth. Now, the oral analysis of the song, I could see it smashes genres together, like I said before, delivering heartful balladry over electronic instrumentation with rap verses uh, in the starting and midpoint of the song. It's in 4/4 meter and it was mid tempo, and I could see that various singers in the group are present, thus different vocal tones and ranges, like higher and feminine type singers to huskier and lower voice singers. So, as I detailed in previous slides, my mother and sister seem to have a very different taste in music in their daily lives. Due to that, I can certainly see that their preferences have definitely influenced on my own preferences in music. And first, to preface, taking social, cultural factors into account, my mother's taste in music could be attributed to her being born and growing up in Korea. And from my own experiences and from what I've seen, Koreans seem to get a musical education early on in the form of piano or violin lessons. And from this, you could relate this back to nationality or education, as my mom reportedly grew up listening to the classical genre and also picking up the violin influenced by this. And such, I could say that as I also have an interest in classical music, I could relate it back to the music my mom plays in the morning or the lessons I took for piano and such when I was younger too. And taking into account my sister's influence, one could factor her age as a primary driver for her preference towards pop music, K-pop specifically, seeing how the world has been taken by storm over the last few years by Korean acts and such, especially among younger audiences. This can explain her enjoyment of it with herself and her friends, and I can say that because of my sister's insistence on listening to this kind of music, it's garnered my own interest in the music as well.